Hi, welcome to Fertility Talks. I'm Mary Wong, and this is live post number, I don't even know what, because I didn't even check it out, but we are talking about 4 secrets to your fertility diet. And I'm here with Dr. Oh my gosh, Tanya Wild.
Yeah.
Naturopathic doctor. And Susanna Dracul, who had been here in the past as well. And she'll share a bit about her story. And in fact, she's going to introduce me today, as well as Dr. Tanya Wild and herself. So let's have you just take over for the fertility talks, because you're so awesome at it.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for the intro. Okay, so you're right. We don't know what number it is, but it's 4 secrets unlocked to the fertility diet that we're talking about today. And I'm the co-founder of Susanna Dracul, the co-founder of Book and Brunch, and we're an online platform that allows anybody to host or attend book and food experiences, creating meaningful conversations, networking, safe space for anybody that wants to meet in real life. But obviously with our pivot now, we transitioned to virtual, and so we started that, and it's really, really neat that we get to do that in this environmental change. So I'm going to introduce Mary. Mary's been in practice for over 27 years. She's the founder of Live Holistic Health Clinic, author of Pathways to Pregnancy, my favorite book. I keep on saying that every time I come on here because I love that book and it changed my perspective. And I forgot to mention, I'm going to go back. I'm also a former IVF patient, 42 years old, currently 6 months pregnant now. I used to say 5 months, now I'm 6. And was a patient at Create Fertility Clinic and coincided with Mary's clinic to get myself on the path to pregnancy. So here I am.
Thank you.
Anyways, I love that book. We'll talk more about it. And she's an international speaker, an acupuncturist, a former IVF patient herself who struggled with infertility. She sat on the Ontario government board, appointed expert panel for infertility and adoption, and the report of this panel laid the foundation for IVF funding in Ontario. So thank you for that, because I got to use that in my first round.
Oh, that's great.
Nice.
But it's true. And then we have Dr. Tanya Wild. Okay, she's a really long time friend of mine. I've known you for over, I think, 20 years now.
Yeah.
And
wow.
You know what? Love you. And also author.
Thank you.
And she has a practice in Vaughan, Ontario for 16 years with an emphasis on therapeutic lifestyle change. She's empowered her patients with the most current naturopathic medical information. And her specialty is helping women with fertility, hormone imbalances, pregnancy, and PCOS. And she's my naturopathic doctor currently before pregnancy and during this pregnancy journey. So I just kind of want to tell you all where I fit in. And Mary is my acupuncturist as well, but we're doing acupuncture patching right now, which is really cool. So that was an interesting journey. We could talk about that after and how it could kind of help with the diet and all that stuff as well. But so I'm really excited that we're here. And as we said, we're here to discuss the 4 secrets to fertility diet unlocked. And we're going to be asking Dr. Tanya Wild 4 questions that many patients have asked over the years. And how it can help with your fertility. And then we're going to complement it with Mary Wong and how you would complement Chinese medicine with that, acupuncture or acupatching at this time, and go from there. So question 1, here we go. And I think we put this on also our social. And I also forgot to mention, sorry, at the bottom of this Facebook Live, we're going to do Q&A at the end. So put any comments, any questions that you guys have for Dr. Tanya Wild, for Mary Wong, and they will answer them. And we love that. We want to make it as interactive as possible. So please, please, please put your questions down. We're going to probably talk for about 20 minutes, and we're going to do a Q&A for another 20 minutes and see where it takes us, and have an hour-long chat. So here we go. Question 1. Okay, we always say that a diet rich in veggies and fruit is very important. Why are they so important? Why are fruits and vegetables so important for fertility?
So first I'm going to add that I too was a fertility patient, and I kind of forgot to add that in my bio.
Yes.
And so, yeah, and I went through 8 years of completing my family. Thankfully managed to have 2 cuties who are 3 and 7 now. I went through IVF with my first, and I always wanted to know why, the whys. And I like to know the whys behind everything. I'm sure you do too, Mary, just the whys before we just do, right? Especially with lifestyle changes. We sometimes know what the lifestyle changes are, but why? So for fruits and vegetables, we know that they are high in antioxidants. So antioxidants is a buzzword I'm sure you guys have heard going around, but what I found was really interesting after reading the literature was that they've actually found in the follicular fluid of follicles, which I'll give you a little kind of physiology lesson in a second, that there are high levels of something called reactive oxygen species. And these little ROSs, for short, because just I don't want to keep saying reactive oxygen species because it's like a tongue twister. These ROSs are quite high in the fertility population, and so within the follicular fluid. So I kind of found that that was really interesting, and it's naturally that we naturally have reactive oxygen species in our follicular fluid to support implantation and ovulation. It creates this inflammatory process, but it's trying to get that balance between the antioxidant and ROS levels. So going back into kind of a physiology lesson, we both know that we have 2 ovaries.
Uh-oh. You're cutting out.
Those ovaries were born, with all the male.
Tanya. Oh, she just cut out for a moment. Okay, let's see if we can get her back, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So just to reiterate what Dr. Wild is saying is that, in the cell, it is actually normal. So often I think people misconstrue that and think we should have 0, but that's not the case. Oh, you're back? You're back.
Hello,
okay.
Are you there? I heard.
Oh, you're cutting out again. Okay, well, we can keep talking about this where it's not like you want 0. I think she's going to come back.
Yeah, she will come back.
Okay, so the fear, people, I find, especially North American culture, you hear one buzzword and you think we should have 0 of that. Like, oh, it must be bad and that's that. So the point is what she's making is that it's naturally occurring within our body. So it's not like you want 0, but it's about a balance. And that really ties into Chinese medicine. And you don't want too much of anything. You don't want too little of anything. So she's going to expand on that when she comes back.
Right. When she's talking about the ROS. How about acupuncture? Since we're waiting for Tanya, like for acupuncture, how it could help as well, right? But I guess it goes back to the balance, and you're talking about the balance.
Right. Yeah. So, well, first of all, let's actually tell people what acupuncture is.
Yes.
Now, in times of COVID, what we're finding is that we cannot access treatment of any kind for that matter. So no one is doing acupuncture in our clinic at the moment or anywhere else. So what do you do? So thankfully, I've been able to access. Welcome back, Dr. Wild.
I don't know what happened.
Okay, good. So I'll just finish this thought and then I'll have you complete.
Yeah,
sure.
Back to your thoughts.
Yeah. So in terms of acupuncture, it's utilizing still energy through the form of a patch. So acupuncture, what it is, it's this light wave patching technology that is placed on acupuncture points so that normally when we emit, so we actually all emit heat and we emit this light energy. And you can see that with electronic devices. I don't know if you've seen pictures or scans and you see people's body heat and you'll see it like the infrared light that our body emits. So this technology reflects back our light energy and at specific wavelengths to create biochemical changes, which include something like glutathione with a certain specific wavelength. So it triggers glutathione production, and glutathione is one of the biggest anti-ROS, so meaning it's an antioxidant. So speaking about antioxidant, let's have you go back to your conversation about.
You might have to go back to the beginning, I think, because it started to cut out a little bit. But
So I'll kind of give that, I'll start with the physiology lesson. So we have 2 ovaries as women. And do you know how many follicles that develop eventually? How many are we born with? Like you guys, Mary, you know how many we're born with. Millions of follicles within the ovaries. But then by the time we hit puberty, we only have about 400,000, which is still a lot, to develop and mature and release an egg. And within, we always think of just eggs, but it's actually follicles that develop and then release an egg. And within those follicles, where the ova or the egg sit, there's this follicular fluid. And that's what we want to keep in balance with regards to these reactive oxygen species, these little molecules that are important for the implantation and the ovulation process. But we don't want too much of them, because if there are too many of them, then the ROS antioxidant ratio becomes imbalanced. So a nice little simple analogy would be if you cut open an apple and you saw the inside, like the white pulp. So what would you see if you cut open an apple and just let it sit there? What color would the white pulp be, Susanna? What would happen to the white pulp if you cut it in half?
Go brown over.
It's going to go brown. That's right. So it goes brown. But what happens if you rub lemon juice on it?
It doesn't. I think it prevents it.
It goes, it kind of browns, but not quite as quickly.
Yeah.
So what ingredient, you can comment below, what ingredient or what active antioxidant would be responsible for kind of delaying that browning?
Okay.
I'm going to get you to guess. You probably know. Or maybe you don't. So you probably do. Vitamin C. So there's
vitamin C. I was going to say that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And there's probably some like bioflavonoids in there also acting
as
antioxidants. So, so when you eat your fruits and vegetables, that's basically the kind of, I use that analogy because it's really a simple visual to understand that if you protect your, ovaries and eggs with your ovaries and your follicles and the follicular fluid, keep that balance, then it won't brown as quickly. So can you guys think of some kind of conditions that would have higher levels of reactive oxygen species that lead to fertility problems? And you can comment below, or Susanna, you can guess. Mary, probably you can, I know you know, Mary.
Well, someone did comment, you know what?
Susanna, you can guess.
No, but someone did say vitamin C on our chat, which is awesome. Amanda. Awesome. So that's cool from before. Mm-hmm.
So what conditions so the thing with women with fertility issues, we often naturally have higher levels of ROS. So there's a natural level of ROS that we all have, and it's part of the ovulation and implantation process. But if it's out of balance, that's where it becomes a problem. So what type of conditions, now I'm quizzing you, would lead to higher levels of ROS within the fertility world? Can you think of any? So endometriosis is one. Good. Yes, so hormonal disturbances of PCOS, exactly. Can you think of any chemicals that might cause that?
Lots of chemicals, right? I mean, chemicals and pesticides. Yeah.
Yes, pesticides and smoking. Yes, so excellent. And if anybody commented, great. We'll look at those after. And then you can ask the next question, Susanna. I don't know if that was explained well enough to understand kind of that whole balance. And actually, I have a question for you guys. How good were you with your fruits and vegetables when you were going through fertility? I'm sure you were awesome. Eating lots of fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, I was. I ate quite a bit. I like vegetables and fruits naturally, so I ate a lot of them. But during my pregnancy, I was like, I'm all into apples. I'm not really as much into vegetables right now. I'm more into fruit for some reason. That's what I'm craving. But I did that. It was, you know what? I did smoothies a lot in the morning. I would nice. I blend all the vegetables in the smoothies. If I knew I didn't have time to make a salad, I just put kind of like spinach into a smoothie and just protein powder and almond butter and all that stuff. And I just drink that to get all that. But,
awesome.
Yeah.
So I naturally gravitate towards vegetables anyway. To me, a meal isn't a meal unless there's lots of vegetables. So it's been like that pretty well since I was in my 20s. So it's just natural.
So to summarize it all, what you're saying is eat your greens, pretty much.
Yes, because they really protect, even people who don't struggle with fertility would benefit from eating your greens and your fruits, and because
So then,
basically by anti-aging.
So what I want to add, though, maybe you can actually adjust this. So when you say this, it's not like you only have vegetables and fruits. Then we need to
No.
So
yes, it's just that why do we want to make sure we get fruits and vegetables? And I'll kind of review some of the best diets when we kind of go through some of the other questions. But why? Because they're high in antioxidants, and they protect our they kind of help balance that ROS to antioxidant ratio, which improves our egg quality. And there's higher pregnancy outcomes and live birth rates when you eat your fruits and vegetables. But there's more to it than that.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So it's a good segue to the next question. Does everything have to be organic? Fruits, vegetables, what you're eating during when you're trying to get pregnant, right? Or in your fertility journey?
So if you are just trying to get pregnant and not struggling with fertility, you don't have to, but it would be definitely recommended for anybody who can afford organic. But what we've found is that if you at least choose select fruits and vegetables that are lower in the pesticide residue, you end up with a higher pregnancy outcome, higher live birth rate. And this is a part of something called the Mediterranean diet, souped up as the pro-fertility diet. So, and the reason you would try to choose the fruits and vegetables in the that are lower in the pesticides is because even in men, they've actually found that their DNA fragmentation is affected. And in women, we would have in our follicular fluid higher ROS, so higher of those reactive oxygen species. And it's kind of cool. In the literature, they did a review in the American Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology. They did an update and a review on the best diets, so a 2019 review called Dietary Patterns and Outcomes of Assisted Reproduction. So what they found was that the higher adherence to the Mediterranean diet, the better the pregnancy and live birth outcome. So, but there were some modifications to the Mediterranean diet. And there's so many diets out there, but, and there's different diets that would benefit people. Maybe if they were struggling with weight in addition to fertility and they wanted to support a healthy weight loss, like the, modified keto and paleo. But the Mediterranean diet, the more you adhere to it, apparently the higher the live birth outcome, which is kind of cool. Do you guys know what's a part of the Mediterranean diet?
No, I was going to ask you, I do some of it, but I don't want to assume.
So it's a diet rich in whole grains, non-processed whole grains, fruits and vegetables, potatoes, legumes, dairy, poultry, red meat, fish, and that's it. I think that's pretty much all of those. And then the pro-fertility diet, which showed even better outcomes, like a 50% higher chance in the comparative group of a higher live birth outcome. They slightly modified the Mediterranean diet, and they made sure that they added vitamin B12, supplemental, folate, and vitamin D as the 3 vitamins. And then they swapped out fruits and vegetables that were high in pesticides for those low in pesticides. So that's why I wanted to bring that in there, because it's kind of interesting that they actually made sure to choose fruits and vegetables that were low in pesticides. In addition, they swapped out some of the meat for fish, and that increased the chances. And in women, more soy, men, no soy. So that was kind of like the main, it was like the Mediterranean diet souped up actually was the best diet, the pro-fertility diet, they called it.
And what we want to add in, though, too, is, and you had mentioned it earlier, so, this is a generalized dietary plan, but if you want something more specific to your
of course, yes, because if you
wise to go to someone that is a professional at
yes, that's right. This is just kind of like generally like a bird's eye view of the literature. If you're just generally trying to improve your health and your fertility, it's like the Mediterranean diet with specific modifications. And then if you have polycystic ovary syndrome, you would, there's other things you would want to basically be following a low glycemic index diet in addition to that. And so it's just kind of interesting, though, that they actually included that, you would try to do your best to have low pesticides, but the whole world doesn't have to be organic, but I mean, it would be great if it were. But if you, the other thing is you can't afford organic, you can go to the Environmental Working Group. And that's a website, and they have the Clean 15 and kind of try to eat fruits and vegetables off of that and avoid the fruits and vegetables on the Dirty Dozen, or buy those organic if you can buy those Dirty Dozen.
Right. So the Clean 15 is a list of 15 vegetables and fruits that you should be buying organic.
Or actually the clean 15.
Oh, they're the cleanest.
15, they're the cleanest. You don't have to buy organic. You can kind of just choose from that group. And then if you want to, you can buy organic, the dirty dozen, or just avoid them.
Okay.
And I list that in my book as well, Pathways to
Oh,
Fertility.
cool.
Yes,
Awesome.
you do. Actually, I just remembered.
And were you
Cool.
guys organic? Did you guys eat organic when you were kind of going through your journey? Yeah.
I
Awesome.
always try to eat organic if I can. But again, it just, I think my rule with organic is this, and that it's a balance of like, if it has a skin that you can peel off, you know, to me is like, okay, it's still, you're not eating it directly. Then like a banana or an orange, but I don't know if like, maybe it's just my assumption. I don't know if pesticides still seep through, like go through, but, or, you know, but anyways, that's kind of how
I used to think that. And apparently Alex told me that bananas, people who are work in the banana industry, they have a higher rate of infertility. And I think because they're higher in pesticides. So despite the
skin.
Yeah, so,
wow.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not.
Oh, so meaning, but wait, so they're in the industry, meaning that they're handling.
They're working and handling with them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But we don't know the absorbability. So if our
Yeah.
like,
so maybe if you peel them, it's okay. I don't actually know where they fall on the
so thick, right?
dozen,
They may not penetrate as much.
Yeah.
So it's good to know because you know, the clean 15, the dirty dozen, they're looking at the pesticide load. So they do test them, and bananas is still in the safe one, right? So I still tend to buy organic bananas, and in fact, we did like a little taste test. And with a home taste test, we actually found that the banana that was organic tasted better.
Okay.
What it's worth.
There you go. But again, it's a good point to have that list for people, obviously, with affordability. Organic is very expensive as well.
Yes.
And you know what, before you go on to the next one though, for those of you who are like, you know, I want to follow this to a T, because I know there's a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
But if it's a difference between organic and it's like really came from California and you live in Toronto and you look at the box and it looks like it's dying, something that's local and it looks totally fresh, it's like, and you know,
for it.
Bit of a bind. I think you want to get the one that looks fresh.
Yeah, you don't want, I mean, what I always say too about just another reason to buy fruits and vegetables is because they're alive. If it can go moldy, eat it, because basically if it can go moldy, that means that, you know, it's alive. And but yeah, you still want to eat foods that aren't molding and before it gets moldy. And definitely like I think that local grown is always, you know, an ideal, but if you can choose organic local, that would be the best option.
Exactly. So tell us why local is best and organic.
Because it doesn't have to be transported, and they probably, I don't even know how they preserve it to look so pretty if it's organic and traveled. And sometimes I wonder if it's actually real. So it has to be approved. It has to say, you know, organic, Canadian, approved by the Canadian or American Organic Society, you know, those are labels, because otherwise it can just have like a sticker that says organic, and then maybe, but it might have been the supermarket that did that, and then just to like kind of make a little more money. So definitely, you want to check your sources for whether or not it's truly organic and
really
local.
Great point. Yeah.
And so you sometimes, I don't want to name names of locations, and sometimes, you know, but sometimes I query, like when you say, like if it's a choice between one location versus local and it doesn't have the sticker, then go for the one that, like, just go for the local food over the one that just has a sticker that's not stamped certified organic. Do you know what I mean? It should say certified organic. If you want to spend your money.
So the other piece I would like to add though too, and if you think about if things are like being flown here or has been in a truck for a long period of time, they pluck them when it's not ripe. So in terms of we look at the gene,
that's a good point. Yeah.
So absorbing enough nutrients. And I don't know if you've actually noticed this yourself. If sometimes if you take something like a tomato, for example, they're ripened. They have not they're getting the nutrients from the soil, and you taste it and there's not much flavor. So there's less nutrients within.
That's why when you go apple picking, the apples always taste so much more nutritive. I fully agree. I just wish, you know, that there was more available local for organic. And So I mean, we're trying to reduce the load, but also be sensible. So yeah, like there's just finding that balance, and you don't have to be perfect. It's just kind of saying, okay, like what looks the best, but what's the, you know, certified organic, and obviously the best then in that case would be local and organic. Yeah.
Right. And within
But
your
you're right.
within your budget.
And within your
We're cutting out again.
We're back.
We're back. Okay, sure. Go on with the next question, Susanna.
So does everybody have to be gluten-free? Is the next question.
So does everyone need to be gluten-free? So no, not everybody. So there's this kind of misconception that everyone going through the fertility world has to be gluten-free. If you have a condition like celiac disease, or perhaps you've got a gluten sensitivity, you notice that it disturbs your stomach, you get bloating, in those cases it makes sense. But just because of you're diagnosed with infertility does not necessarily mean you have to be gluten-free. But what I recommend often does result in a lower gluten diet anyway. It's just kind of looking at when you're having your cheats, what's in that cheats, I guess you could call them your cheats, or just your flexibility. So what I think is more important than being gluten-free is trying to eat foods in their whole grain, whole form. So rather than, focusing on, if something's gluten-free, you eat, for example, brown rice instead of brown rice pasta, because brown rice would be in its unprocessed form. If it's turned into brown rice pasta, then it's been pulverized, turned into a flour, and then refined. So the flexibility would be kind of having some, maybe if you wanted just whole wheat pasta once in a while, and rather than trying to go for a gluten-free white rice or brown rice pasta, thinking that that would be a healthier option if you're trying to have some flexibility. But generally speaking, the more unprocessed and less refined, the healthier, rather than just specifically trying to target gluten-free. So I have a quiz, if you get what I'm saying, just to make sure you grasp what I'm saying, because a lot of my patients are always like, they're like, what? They're trying to, understand what I'm saying. So is quinoa pasta, would that be a healthier option?
Versus what?
Versus, let's say, quinoa.
Well, no.
Which would be the healthier option, right? And the reason is because, or let's say, for example, quinoa pasta over whole wheat pasta, which is healthier? Quinoa pasta or whole wheat pasta?
Whole wheat pasta.
So the whole wheat pasta is probably healthier, depending on the level of refined of either of them. But if it's like a whole grain, whole wheat pasta, it may actually be healthier and higher in protein. It depends. You can kind of compare them. But I guess the bottom line is kind of looking at, I guess a better kind of example would be like white rice pasta versus whole grain pasta. The whole grain pasta would be healthier over the white rice pasta, for example. But people think, oh, I'm just going to go gluten-free, and that's healthier. But it actually has a higher glycemic index than whole wheat pasta. Now, would you be eating whole wheat pasta all the time? No, you wouldn't be eating whole wheat pasta all the time. That would be like kind
of she's cutting out again.
Balanced. Oh.
Yeah, it's okay. You're back. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you for addressing that, because I was going to say this, because a lot of people will say, okay, I'm going to do gluten-free. For them, they go to the store and they get, it's like you get targeted at the grocery store now because they have gluten-free everything.
Yes.
So there's this assumption that, gluten-free is good. So all these products that says gluten-free is good.
Yes.
And meanwhile, they're highly processed foods.
Right.
Yeah.
It's amazing for people who have celiac disease, because they literally, when they consume that food, there's an attack on the villi and the small intestine when you consume it. Like, these antibodies literally attack your intestine. So that can affect your fertility as well. So in the cases of women who have celiac disease, or if you notice that, when you eat whole grain pasta, it really disturbs you, then sure, avoid it.
Yeah.
And then even food sensitivity tests, like a lot of people will say, well, can I just test to make sure that I do an IgG food sensitivity test to see whether or not I'm allergic? Well, first of all, it doesn't test for allergies, but secondly, it does look at food sensitivities. And I wouldn't run the test unless you had a noticeable, like, irritable bowel or eczema. You're not just doing it for fertility specifically.
Right.
It wouldn't be necessary. There's, just eating whole foods, unprocessed in that case. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Add that in for sure, because of course, because the keen person that's going through fertility challenges, they want to do everything.
Yep.
Yeah. Right. You could save your money and, buy organic, for example.
Right.
Or get acupuncture treatments. Yeah. Rather than trying to do that. So, yeah.
Nice. Okay. This is always a good question. Is coffee good or bad?
So is coffee good or bad? I love coffee, and I'll tell you about whether or not I drank it during my fertility journey, but is it good? So it has some pros in that it, elevates mood, helps with energy. It does have some antioxidant values because of some of the constituents like caffeine in low doses. And it actually can support estrogen metabolism as long as it's coupled with other cofactors like magnesium. So in a small amount, around 150 milligrams or less, like a cup, which equates to about a cup of coffee, like a small Tim's cup of coffee, it's actually completely fine. And this is the literature based on what I was reviewing 5 years ago when I contributed for the chapter for Dr. Bellerak, Embracing Your Fertility. So it said anything less than 150 milligrams, otherwise more than that, and increases your risk for miscarriages. This is what the old literature said. Recent literature says that it doesn't matter what amount you have, like actually it's kind of all over the place. There are some reviews that show that if you have more than 300 milligrams, it increases your risk for infertility. If and then some, like there's a Danish study that was recent that said there was no correlation with drinking coffee and fertility. So because it's so back and forth, in my opinion, it's kind of going back to saying, okay, let's just be reasonable. Have a little bit of coffee, choose organic because coffee tends to be riddled with pesticides. But don't drink coffee intentionally if you aren't somebody who is a coffee drinker for fertility. It's just if you already have it, to try and have some balance in your diet and incorporate something. We don't want to take everything out of the diet, and it's not necessarily it's not detrimental, and it's safe for sure under 150 milligrams. So it's like finding the kind of safe level, I guess you could say. And now I didn't drink coffee, but I kind of wish I did during my fertility year because I was so strict, and I was like, okay, be perfect, and like letting go sometimes. And I really enjoy my cup of coffee. So since I kind of was done, I'm like, I'm drinking coffee again, and I really missed it. And now looking back and looking at the studies, I for sure would have added it and just have some flexibility there,
That's so, yeah.
Susanna, did you have coffee?
I did in the beginning, and then I stopped. And I feel like coffee is a habit. It's a forming habit. So after 2 or 3 weeks, I didn't miss it.
Right.
So now I'm not drinking coffee right now or anything. But I did in the beginning. I was drinking like 2 cups probably. And then I was just like, oh, I'll just stop. I just stopped. I think I just stopped because I was like, okay, I want to I think it wasn't really for the fertility journey for me. It was, I stopped because it's making me anxious. Sometimes I think everything affects people different. Yeah, stimulant affects people differently. Like people could be on coffee and be like it's great. This takes me to this level. For me, I'm like, okay, it's making me anxious. I need to get off of it. It wasn't necessarily for fertility. It was about that, just my own.
Yeah, so I was the same. I mean, I had stopped coffee years ago. I only drank it really when I was in university, pulling all-nighters. For a function. And then within that, past that point, I'm sensitive like Susanna, where because within the caffeine, the constituents actually increase your adrenal stress in a way. So some people kind of need that to kickstart them, but for me, it's like I'm already ramped up, so I don't need more.
So it borrows a little bit of energy. Yeah. So it borrows a little bit of energy from the adrenals for sure. So do a lot of the, the adaptogenic herbs. And so, but it has been shown in the literature to elevate mood because of that adrenal corticotropic pathway. But so I just figured don't encourage people to drink it if they aren't, but if they do, I don't want to take it away from them a small amount. And if they're sensitive and really enjoy the taste of it, an organic decaf, or just switching to teas, but it's the same thing with the caffeine and teas. Just be cautious. Like I wouldn't go more than 150 milligrams.
Yeah. And I love it that you're really accentuating, expressing that it's about balance, right? So we're not talking about cut everything out of your life that you like.
Yes, because there's so much, there's this feeling when you go through fertility, like a feeling of lack of control. So you try to control everything else including what's going in. And so you want to have some flexibility so you don't go, a little bit crazy trying to be too perfect within the things that you can control. Yeah.
And it's not just about going crazy. It's also in Chinese medicine, we really don't separate out, what you're doing physically to the emotional well-being. So
yes,
in that camp of I'm going to be anal and I'm just going to focus and obsess about doing things perfectly, but emotionally you're feeling like you're deprived and you're like a former shell of yourself, then I don't think that's so healthy, right? So the balancing act is important.
Yes. Definitely. It's finding that yin and yang.
Right. Very much.
Yes, for sure.
Well, we have some comments and a couple questions, and we've been chatting for about actually more than a half an hour right now about all that, but I just wanted to end it with thank you for answering those questions. And just anybody, please put down more comments and questions for Dr. Chan Wild and Mary Wong, and they can answer anything that we discussed today with the fertility diet. It was good. Thank you I learned a couple things new today that I didn't know before. So thank you for having this talk. And yeah, Mary, do you want to add anything with, how Chinese medicine can integrate into the diet and acupuncture and anything that could complement what Tanya was saying?
Well, so I'll address the acupuncture after, but in terms of the dietary piece, again, we're looking at the strength and the function of the digestive system. And so everyone's bodies are a little different. So what is suitable for your body, we look at what you're eating. And surely, so we talk about what we're eating, but it's also equally important as to how we're eating it. So you were speaking to Susanna about your smoothies, right? So in Chinese medicine, we typically say you want to cook your foods, especially vegetables, because typically plant cellular walls, it's difficult to digest. That's why we call it fiber. So we want to have it partially broken down. So not like cook it to death.
No.
Cook it enough to break down some of the cellular walls so you can extract the nutrients from. However, Chinese medicine came around for 3,000, 5,000 years ago. They didn't have the Vitamix that they do now.
Right.
True. The modern technology has helped us break
cook
down
things. Yeah.
Right? A lot of things.
Blend it. Yeah.
Blending makes the nutrients
it's like
possible.
I would note that though, a lot of people ask me about juicing, and juicing gets rid of the fiber and some of the nutrients, and I don't recommend juicing. I'm fine with smoothies, but I do I think it's interesting you're bringing up TCM properties in cooking. If people have, let's say, a spleen chi deficiency, we don't get too technical, but loose stool, then I would say if they're having a smoothie, then definitely having it room temperature might even help rather than having it cold. Not just having the soups and stews and, kind of digested in that way, but even with the smoothie.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, listen, my husband makes a smoothie for me, and we do have it smoothie at least once a week. If it's too cold, I actually get a stomachache. Like it's like,
oh, interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
So, there is something to be said about helping our digestive tract receive the food so that we can help to break it down. So we call it transforming the food into utilizable nutrients. And then we transport them to the body where it's necessary. And of course, when you're in reproductive, we're talking about reproduction, then we want it to go all the way down to our cellular level, which includes our eggs and our sperm.
Yes, exactly.
And then, so in terms of acupuncture, as I said earlier in the talk, we can't do that right now, hopefully soon. But in the meantime, women are reaching out and saying, hey, what can you do right now? So I'm so thrilled to have found acupuncture because it's a technology that you use on acupuncture points. So to stimulate the body as you would with acupuncture, but now this is phototherapy. So using light waves emitted from your own body to reflect back specific wavelengths of light into the body to trigger and to stimulate certain biochemical changes, which includes, as I mentioned earlier, like the production of glutathione, which will be an antioxidant to the body. And there's like 11 patented frequencies that LifeWave's founder, David Schmidt, has produced. And it's just so fascinating. So, you know, from pain to anti-inflammation to actually stimulating production of stem cells, the latest one, really fantastic, and we direct it directly on acupuncture points. So we've been using that in place. And what's great about that is that you can do it in the comfort of your own home. And for those who are what I call needle shy and don't like needles, it's certainly a way to get around that too, if you don't want to ever do acupuncture. But if you want more information, you can always get in touch with me. And
yeah, I'd be great. And we could, you know, there's some questions about patients, accepting new patients. So how to get in contact with the both of you, I could post that on the live as well and go from there. So I could do that while we're
great. And what's
nice
about that is that you know, because we're all doing virtual, you could be anywhere and we can take you.
That's right. Wow. Yeah. There's quite a few. My thing just refreshed, so there's quite a few comments and questions. I was like, oh, there's like 5. No, there's more. Okay. I was like, I needed to refresh it.
Tanya was going to say something though.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to take it one step extra. Yeah. Sounds like, you know, how we were talking about, you know, nutrition and properties, and just even, you know, there's been a lot of stress lately being in this whole new norm. And one way you can add meditation to your day is literally kind of going through your 5 senses with your food, just to kind of ignite the parasympathetic, the calm part of your nervous system. So you're not in fight or flight and stress mode before you eat, to add that extra element of improved digestion. And what I mean by the 5 senses, kind of just looking at your food and admiring and being grateful for it and smelling it, and, you know, just like tasting it, listening to the food when it's cooking, just kind of like really just make it a nice, you know, routine rather than just shoveling your food, because you don't digest it as well that way. So it's like, going through,
I have a tendency to shovel my food, but I'm trying to be more mindful.
Do it more. Yeah.
I'm like eating fast. Okay. So from David, I have 2 questions. So first, if a pregnant woman has fruit cravings, because I talked about that.
Yes.
In her body, can we assume she's lacking vitamins in her body, or is it some kind of compensation to eat sweet flavors?
I think
liver stagnation or syndrome, for example, since other processed foods aren't quite healthy, like chocolate and other sweets. Interesting.
So the craving is chocolate and other sweets. Is that the question?
No, so it says if a pregnant woman has fruit cravings.
Fruit or food? Fruit.
Oh,
got it.
Fruit, sorry. Okay. Fruit cravings. Mm-hmm. Can we assume she's lacking vitamins in her body, or is it some kind of compensation to eat sweet flavors? Since other processed foods aren't quite healthy, chocolates and other sweets.
You want to take that on first, and then I can answer?
I would say she's probably just needing more calories, and fruits are just really easy to process, and so that she's just, her body's naturally trying to eat more. And fruits taste, you know, good. I found in my first trimester, we're talking now, she's pregnant, right? And
yes, when pregnant, because I talked about that. I'm like gravitating more towards fruit versus vegetables right now.
Yeah, so I found that I had definite aversions and cravings for various things. And if you crave, for example, red meat, it might be that you're iron deficient. So in the case of fruit, I think it might just be literally, it's just easy to digest, especially if you have nausea. Some women will crave carbohydrates, like crackers and breads at that point as well. And I always say to them, again, flexibility, try to get through the first trimester as much as possible to consume as much protein as you can, because often women will have aversions to meat and really want to go towards the fruits and carbs, but do your best. And then so much easier once you're past the second trimester, if you're somebody who experiences nausea. That's how I would approach it. What would you say, Mary?
Well, and yes, I agree with you 100% and wholeheartedly. And I myself also have fruit cravings. And I'll tell you, if there is one thing that, you know, I would love in the normal day to day, it is dark chocolate. And when I was pregnant, it's like 0. I didn't want anything to do with it. It was like straight.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
And that was fascinating, because what I realized too, it's like, and I didn't like water. I am like a huge fluid person. And when I was in my first trimester, I couldn't drink water and I loved fruit. So if you got to know, fruit tendency has higher water content.
Yes.
And
that's true.
Access to sugar. And guess what?
Mhm.
In first trimester, we're often really tired. So I'll always say it is like, it's kind of like you're doing a marathon the first trimester, because you're, creating all these blood vessels and you're building a placenta and all that. There's so much activity. So you're consuming energy. And so that's why, Tanya, was saying, oh, it's quick energy. And absolutely, that's exactly what that is. And we break down the sugar so quickly because that's what food is, right? Sugar.
Yeah. So second question, this is a Chinese medicine question to you, Mary. So if women eat a lot of fruit, even though it's very nutritious, it seems in Chinese medicine as cold raw food. So you could get some slow metabolism.
So that's really, okay, go on.
Is it viable for the sake of nutrition value?
Okay, it's a great question. Thank you. And the truth is, in Chinese medicine, we look at foods having different qualities. So even within the fruit spectrum, there's certain fruits that are considered more cold and more damp. So that would include something like mangoes, which I actually love, but it's a little damp and a little cool. So we don't want to do that so much. And watermelon traditionally has been thought to be bad in first trimester because it's definitely cooling, right? But I say, again, now in modern times, it's not an all or nothing, right? And so the number one thing about fruit is if you want it and you crave it, have it room temperature. And then secondly, in fact, my daughter loves this. She'll heat up an orange, like whole in the water, and then she peels it. And my daughter loves it because it's like juice comes out. It's like amazing.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice. So there's different ways of doing, and oranges actually are great for first trimester because it helps to enhance digestion.
There you go. So from Stephanie, what is the best diet for women with PCOS? And I know this is probably a general question you can answer because you were saying before, everyone has a very specific situation. So that's the right disclaimer about that. But
so I have polycystic ovary syndrome, so I've done a lot of research around this, and I think it depends on what kind of body type you have. And there's actually a really good book out there, 8 Steps to Reverse Your PCOS, by a mutual friend of Mary and myself, Dr. Fiona McCullough, and she goes through a lot of details on how to help you with your PCOS, which I love. Excellent book. Now, with regards to nutrition, if you're somebody who's trying to lose weight, then it would be different. You would probably, depending on what other conditions you may have coexisting with PCOS, but you could, generally speaking, look at a low glycemic index diet, even a paleo diet, the Mediterranean diet I was talking about earlier, with some just modifications of kind of reducing carbohydrates if you're someone who's also trying to lose weight. If you're not, just that Mediterranean diet that I was speaking of earlier, and keeping a certain amount, like you don't want to be you want to still focus on low glycemic index, but the goal isn't to necessarily clearly lose weight. If you're a healthy BMI, you just have to be careful you don't actually go the other extreme and then lose your ovulation because you're eating too clean, because that can happen as well.
Right.
A certain amount of fat. But women with lean sisters, I call it lean sisters, women with the lean form of PCOS, they still have insulin resistance. So it's kind of like this balance between eating lower glycemic index carbs, but trying to make sure you're still getting brown rice and quinoa and root vegetables and legumes in a balance, in addition with your proteins, like your meats and fishes, and fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds. I wouldn't recommend, being necessarily vegetarian. I feel like having that extra protein is helpful, just to feel full and to support your hormones. So I was a vegetarian for years, and it actually disturbed my PCOS, and I switched at 26. So so just basically really helpful to know that it depends on if you're trying to lose weight and the type of PCOS you have. And there's more different sisters, I call it, and that Dr. Fiona discusses in her book, and the various diets that are recommended. And if you see Mary or myself or Dr. Fiona, you basically would get an individualized recommendation, but hopefully that kind of gives you a general sense.
Right. So Stephanie's like, is there a link to the modified Mediterranean diet pro fertility diet?
I can give it to Mary. It is in all my references, and she can put it on her
We
blog.
could put it on this chat if
Yeah,
you could get it.
for sure.
Do that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All my
So back to the Mediterranean diet in general. The next question is from Crystal. Is fish okay prepping body for IVF or seafood?
Sorry, say that again.
Is fish okay prepping the body for IVF or seafood?
Fish or seafood, okay, yeah, both. I think you just have to, so actually that pro-fertility diet recommends increasing your fish and reducing your red meat intake because of the omega-3s. You just have to be careful of those types of fish that you select because there is quite a large amount of mercury in some fish. So trying to go with a fattier, lower mercury fishes and seafood. So for example, shrimp is lower in mercury, but it's a lean one, so not very much omega-3s. So it would be more of a protein support, but not very nutritive. And from an omega-3 perspective, going for something like salmon and rainbow trout would be healthier, or sardines. And if you go to Seafood Watch on Google, you can find the fishes that are the lowest in mercury and highest in omega-3s.
Okay. So is Mary Wong accepting new patients? Yes, you are.
Thanks for answering for me, Susanna.
Well, you are, because we're going to put both of your contact information on this chat. If anybody needs to get in contact for individualized diets or any questions, because like we said, this is very general, right? This talk helps. All right. So which fruits are low in pesticides?
So good question. Berries are high. Yeah. So I always try to choose those ones organic, but I can pull open the list that I referred to. So the dirty, so we're talking about the clean 15. Mm-hmm.
So avocados are generally good, and I mean.
So yeah, avocados, yeah, of course, pineapple, cabbage. Oh, wait a minute, that's 1 second. So the clean 15.
Maybe we could post the clean 15 as well on this.
Yeah.
There's a couple links.
Yeah, that one you can all Google, actually, guys.
Yeah.
So papayas are considered, but they're higher in the glycemic index, but still, it's great. Papayas and honeydew melon are clean 15. Yeah. It's actually a combination between fruits and vegetables, and there's only 2. So now if I go to the dirty dozen.
Yeah, the strawberry is number 1 for the dirty dozen.
Right, so get those. This is what we were talking about earlier. Get those organic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then yes, there's quite a few on the dirty dozen. So apples, I choose organic always, and berries and spinach. Those are all in the dirty dozen. Strawberries, grapes. You know what? Even though grapes are on the dirty dozen, because they're not always available organic, that's where I actually show some flexibility and have them, even though I know they're really high in pesticides. Without the example, I'm like, I just want grapes, so I go for it. But you know, if they are quite riddled with pesticides, so I wish there was more. And when they are organic and available, then I will. And I choose other fruits in those cases, but sometimes I just want grapes, you know?
So what was on the list? It was papaya and pineapple? Was that the 2?
Papaya and yes.
Pineapple was the 2. That was
and honeydew melon.
Yeah. For the and for the clean.
So it's 3. So for the clean, it was pineapple, papaya, and honeydew melon. Yeah.
Okay.
And we can give you the link as well.
Which goes back to my theory about having a skin. Just right?
Yes. But that's what I mean. If it's thicker the skin, less for the
absorption of the pesticide
inside, right?
Yeah.
But I just want to make a note of this because everyone's so big on kale these days.
Oh,
so
yes.
That also makes it into the dirty dozen list. So meaning if you want kale, try to get organic.
Okay.
So here's a question for you, Tanya. What do you think of those? There's those cleaning solutions out there to wash your vegetables. What do you think of those? I've personally never used them.
Either have I, but I want to know.
No. Yeah. So no, I long time ago, my mother used to use them, but I don't use them and I don't recommend them. I would just stick to the lists, and I don't think they're very effective. I don't know that there's literature or research to support that they're effective. So.
Okay. All right.
But
So this is a coffee question. Coffee seems seen in Chinese medicine as something that dries internal liquids usually. Is it good for fertility?
Right. So coming from the Chinese medicine perspective, you're right, because it takes away moisture from the body. So it's something that we tend to avoid. However, just as Tanya says, we're looking at moderation. And again, Chinese medicine really upholds the thing about balance. So balance doesn't necessarily mean 100% abstinence, right? So if you're a person that is a total lover of coffee and you give it up, how would you feel? In your life, right? If you're totally fine,
and I have some patients who are definitely like, if you take my coffee away, I'm going to be really depressed, and it really has that impact. And of course, you're trying to affect the lifestyle in other ways while they're, and then they may feel just enough energy without it eventually. But and it's not absolutely necessary to take it out, just trying to limit it. And I always say, for every cup of coffee, have 2 cups of water with it, so you don't get the dehydration from it.
Yeah, and we're not right. Pot of coffee a day. Oh, it's fine. Just drink all your coffee.
No, you guys are it's a balanced approach, I think. And I think that's with life in general, right? The more rigid you are with things, the less, I always say, they work out. So just have balance, right?
That's the key message for sure.
That's the key message, really.
Right. Key message is for sure balance.
Balance. Okay, this is from Dr. Wild. You should do Chinese medicine treatment. It's great for PCOS. I treated my wife with a prognosis. Yeah, that's why we have Mary. That's why we have the two. It's the balance.
Yes. And naturopathic doctors actually are, I was registered as a acupuncturist, but I didn't want to have to pay the fees for the acupuncture anymore, the association. But we as naturopathic doctors can treat using acupuncture. But I would go to Mary if I needed to know about herbs, because we aren't taught about herbs in naturopathic medicine school. So medical school. So
And this is from Kelly. What do you think of intermittent fasting for fertility?
So good question. Intermittent fasting can be helpful if you are somebody who's overweight and you're trying to improve your insulin resistance. Even in the case of PCOS, if you are lean, but just getting enough calories within your eating window. So now for people who do you guys know what intermittent fasting is?
Oh, right. You better explain it.
Yeah, maybe I do, but maybe not everyone knows.
So intermittent fasting is when you eat within a feeding window, typically, it varies the timing, but I'll give an average one is an 8-hour eating window and then a fasting 16-hour window, but you can drink water and black coffee if you're a coffee drinker in the mornings. And it is helpful, again, if you're somebody who has PCOS and you're trying to regulate your ovulation and you're trying to lose weight, because it improves insulin sensitivity when you narrow down your food into a certain eating window, because you give your pancreas a break from constantly shunting out insulin. Because every time you shunt out insulin from your pancreas, your insulin receptors kind of get a little bit annoyed if it's over and over again. So the concept is trying to really just narrow it down. Now, is it helpful for fertility in all cases? No. It's especially harmful for women with HA, which is hypothalamic amenorrhea, where they aren't ovulating from under eating. So it's very important, because sometimes even diagnosing polycystic ovary syndrome, that's one of the things you're trying to differentiate between, is polycystic ovary syndrome for an anovulatory woman, a woman who's not ovulating. It could be for a few different reasons, but so it's just being very selective of the individual. If a woman has metabolic syndrome, it can be helpful. But once you're pregnant, if you have been intermittent fasting, it's been beneficial, and you've been losing weight, for example, and you're trying to get pregnant, you have PCOS, and you're successfully losing weight, I don't recommend to continue unless you actually have type 2 diabetes, and then you'd have to definitely do it with your doctor, because it's you have to be safe when you're pregnant. So
again, the bottom line really is about, you might want to consult a professional with regards to your dietary habits.
Yes.
And then the last question, we're going to end it because we're approaching our hour and it goes by so quickly, is amino acids, are they okay during pregnancy?
So amino acids are basically breakdown products of protein. Like that's what amino acids make up protein. So when you eat protein, yeah, like fish, chicken, turkey, I think if the person's kind of specifically referring to like powders, like branched chain amino acids, it's not something I would recommend. I'd rather a person just eat whole foods. And I mean, they could have protein powders and protein shakes. But specifically BCAAs, I don't think that there's any literature to say that it's harmful, but I wouldn't recommend it. I would just kind of eat protein.
Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that is it. We're going to end it today. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much,
for,
Susanna and Mary.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me and allowing me to moderate and do this fertility talk. It's really great for me and just to give back and being a fertility patient myself and just helping the community. So thank you for bringing me on this journey. I love that you're both my practitioners and it's great. It's having this support system, right? So I have that great support system and these are the talks that give support for others, that give them hope and, you know, positivity to do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to put at the bottom of the comments contact information for both of you, for Mary Wong's clinic, for Tanya's clinic, if you guys have any more questions or do you want to see them as for appointments, because like we said, everything's very individual, right? And go from there. But we'll also post the Mediterranean diet, right? We were talking about that.
All the references for everything I said.
Okay, perfect.
People can go on to Mary's blog.
Thank you so much, Tanya, Dr. Wow.
Yeah. And then everyone's just like, thanks to all of you. Thanks so much, you guys. Thanks, ladies. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming to watch.
Yeah, thanks for coming on a Friday at 7:30.
This is our first time on the slide, and we need to acknowledge that we took an hour trying to get on Wednesday.
We did.
Normal time.
Yeah.
And it's like, we have to get this on. So we committed to do it tonight on a Friday night. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, Susanna. Thank you, Tanya, for being here. It's awesome. And for those of you, if it's the first time, I have like over 160 videos right now. So you can just scroll down below for them. And also you can go to my YouTube channel, which is Meet Mary Wong, and all of them are there. And coming up, we're adding a special edition on the Monday. So we're totally going off-roading. It's normally on a Wednesday night. So next week we're doing two, one on Monday night and one on Wednesday night. The one on Monday night is because there is now talk about fertility clinics opening. So Dr. Bratz and I are going to talk about this, okay?
Nice.
And what to expect and what is actually currently happening. So just to give you guys more status updates. So that's Monday night, 8:30, same place, same channel. And Wednesday night, I'm actually bringing on Dr. Sharma, part of the same Create Clinic. And we're also bringing on Alyssa, who is the founder of Lilia.
Oh, yes.
She made the product for home testing. So doing blood tests at your home, and especially during this time of COVID when you really can't go to anywhere, right? But apparently you can still do this. So we're going to talk more about that and the information for that. So it'll be awesome. So I hope you guys can join us Monday night, Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. And also if you go onto my website, aliveholistic.health.ca, on the past Tuesday, we did a webinar, a free community online event where we basically went through meditation, like little mini sessions. And I talked about mindset shifts. There was acupressure demonstration. There was an exercise demo. And then I talked more about acupatching. So go and check that out. Register. There's future events coming as well. So that you guys get all the information, because you guys love information, but in a way that you can take it in and empower you and have you feel more hopeful, less alone, because we are in a community.
Yeah, and share it. If you like this video, don't forget to share it, right? To anybody who might want to need this or hear this. So.
Okay.
All right.
Guys.
Thanks. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Have a great weekend. Yes.
Have an awesome weekend. Get outside.
Get outside. Absolutely.